Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game and is trying to get the attention of any famous actors who fancy investing heavily in a football podcast. No luck so far, unfortunately, although Lawrence Fox has offered us 30 quid and a box full of unused Make America Great Again baseball caps. I'm Kevin Day and he is Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. How are you, Kieran?
I'm okay. I'm glad to have made it here on time because I took the dog out this morning and there was a pheasant in the woods.
Oh my goodness!
So he spent the next hour desperately trying to catch the bloody thing and failing. But at one stage, I was worried about whether I'd get back here in time or not.
That's a little insight into the world of man of the people, Kieran Maguire. You're a long way from the elephant in the castle, aren't you? I'm sorry I'm late, darling. The dog spotted a pheasant. What can you do? I presume it's on the menu for this evening now. Is it the pheasant?
Yeah, the Baroness is busy plucking.
You're lucky I'm still talking to you, Kieran, actually, because we had a Zoom chat. Now, this was obviously pre-pheasant. So we had a Zoom chat this morning with producer Guy, which you thought it'd be funny to wear a Brighton shirt. So I'm amazed we're still talking. But at least we know what producer Guy wants for Christmas. That was the one thing we got out of that meeting. And speaking of Christmas, believe it or not, but there are some football clubs who are actually on Santa's nice list. And that takes a lot of doing. But they're also on Kieran's nice list, which takes even more doing. And one of them is Lincoln City. And we'll be talking to their chief executive, Liam Scully, later on in the show. But of course, it's Newsday on the pod, Kieran, and for once, not all of it is disastrous. Derby fans, for example, you can stand down. You're not in it this week. Firstly, Kieran, the government hosted a virtual summit on the financial future of English football. What came out of it?
Yes, well, this was held by, effectively chaired by Oliver Dowden, who apparently, according to my sources, managed to switch everybody off, and therefore the meeting got abandoned early. I don't think he's Mr. Technology.
I
think even you might be able to teach him a lesson or two when it comes to tech. But there were representatives from the Premier League, from the EFL, from the Football Supporters Association, the FA. And in the main, I think it was a progressive meeting, which is good to report.
Yeah.
I think sort of the key takeaways is that he is now talking about a return to football before crowds, but this is likely to be based on sort of local decisions being made, right, and which tier you're in. Now, you know, from anybody's point of view, initially, you've got to want that to take place, but you can then start to see some clubs saying, well, hold on, we're in tier 3, we're hosting a home game, we can't have anybody watching it, but you've got somebody who's in tier 1 who's got a few thousand fans, and we know that fans make a slight difference. So is that going to mean that that's going to impact upon results on the pitch? But I'm hoping people will see the much broader picture in relation to this, and anything which gets fans into matches is good for fans, is good for players, and is good for the coffers of the club.
It's also likely to cause some financial resentment as well, because we've already spoken to Liam Scully, and it was fascinating and very interesting. But if, for example, Lincoln City are allowed to have 3,000 fans back in, but Hull City, for example, aren't, then Hull City aren't going to be very happy about that, because it means that a local club can get on a financial even keel before they can, presumably. So there needs to be an interest of balance and equity here, doesn't there?
There does. But if we go to lowest common denominator, and it's either all clubs pay before fans or none, that's simply not going to work, because there are going to be hot spots. Realistically, yes, it's great news that there's been progress made on in terms of the vaccine, but there's no way that 50 million people in this country are going to be vaccinated by January or February. It's going to be a slow and laborious process. But if we can get some local things taking place, then that's one less club to worry about, and perhaps we can then focus the attention. And if there is going to be any government financial support, that can go to the clubs who can't play before a paying audience. Oliver Dowden also said that that there was no way that the taxman is going to petition to wind up clubs during the current climate. So that was a positive. He seems to be very anti-parachute payments. Parachute payments, there's good things and bad things about them. So I'm not quite sure, how he's reached that conclusion. But plenty to come out, and in the main, I think it's a step forward rather than a step backwards.
Well, that's good news. And 4 minutes and 20 seconds in, we already went for the lowest common denominator, Kieran. It's taken us a lot longer than that on some pods to reach that low down. Now, as we alluded to in the introduction, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney's takeover of Wrexham has been approved by the club's fans. And I think you can say very approved, because of the 2,000 people eligible to vote, 1,809 voted for, 26 against, and there were 9 abstentions, which I hope adds up to 2,000. You can seasonally adjust it if not. So the club's fans have approved it. What happens now, Kieran?
Well, what will happen is that a formal process will have to go through. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have set up a company in the USA, and that will formally acquire Wrexham Football Club as is. They are intending to invest around about £2 million into the club, is my understanding. And if you compare that to the type of Hollywood investments we've seen in the NBA and the NFL and other in American franchises, that works out as a really cheap investment from their perspective. It's certainly generated a huge amount of interest. If I was the Wrexham commercial director, Christmas has already come early. It's almost as good as getting your book for Christmas, available in all bookstores and Amazon and Waterstones, of course. I think it's certainly a step forward. There's also talk about a documentary being made in terms of the involvement of Reynolds and McElhenney, some sort of Netflix-style program. My understanding that Netflix normally pay hundreds of thousands per episode for a show of this nature. So the club could benefit financially from that as well. Everybody in Wrexham at present is absolutely delighted. Every one of my female friends who's got any vague interest in football or even no interest in football is asking me, can we get Ryan Reynolds or Rob McElhenney on the show?
Well, we can try. Maybe we'll get them on the same week as Steve Dale. That would be a good introduction. As you pointed out, Kieran, and also I'm on about to say that your book would make a lovely Christmas present as well, also available in many different outlets. There has been a couple of cynical voices sounded by American journalists in particular who talk about the Netflix thing. They actually pay between £300,000 and £800,000 an hour for documentary content. So it could make a lot of money, but I mean, this is a convoluted way of making money out of a documentary, isn't it? Actually acquiring a football club to do so. It doesn't seem to me that this is the reason for doing it, as a couple of US journalists have indicated.
No, if you want to make money in football, have nothing to do with a football club. There's money to be made. There's money to be made from broadcasting. Certainly, there's money to be made from some other areas. We've spoken about agents and other people connected with the game. But buying a football club with the view to then pitching it, I think is a fairly tenuous. And looking at the Wikipedia pages and the Forbes pages in relation to these two gentlemen, they don't need to make £300,000 or £400,000 here and there. We've got to be honest. They're almost at producer guy level of wealth.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I was notified today that somebody's updated my Wikipedia page to say always turns left out of the pub when going to Palace games, which is. It'd be nice if it said Kevin Day earnings, but there you go. The £2 million figure, ex-player for Wrexham and director Barry Horn is also a very nice chap. He reckons £2 million will be enough to buy your way out of that league. It's great to have that optimism, but you need to sort of temper that because it doesn't guarantee anything, does it really? If you're already thinking, right, that's enough to get us out of this league, we're laughing.
No, there are no guarantees in football, but we've seen Salford under Gary Neville and his Manchester United colleagues. They put in around about £2 million, or rather their co-investor put in all the money, is my understanding, in terms of the loans that went into the club, and they've now established themselves in League Two. Once you get to League Two, it then gets pretty tough. There's plenty of ambitious owners there. So if Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney think that they can quickly get to the championship in 3 or 4 seasons, that's not going to be as easy as they thought. But there's certainly a feel-good factor about Wrexham. Everybody remembers their FA Cup victory when Mickey Thomas scored that goal, and I can remember that the likes of some of their former players when they were sort of a genuine sort of a club which you could have a lot of affection for, having been to the Wrexham Fans United game against Bristol City. I think that was around about 2004 to 2005. They are the most hospitable fans, and you couldn't want anything but best wishes towards them.
Yeah, well, I remember Joey Jones playing for them. He was the most frightening left back I've ever seen play football, and I've seen Stuart Pearce and Mick Dennis play football. So, now a story that we've been following with some degree of alarm in the past few weeks, Kieran, is the bitter dispute over the distribution of the National Lottery Rescue Fund for National League clubs, and 9 of those National League teams have now written an open letter calling on League chairman Brian Barwick to resign. The 2 of the clubs are Dulwich Hamlet, whose chairman Ben Clasper was so passionate and eloquent on the subject when we spoke to him recently, and Chester FC, whose director Jeff Banks was just as angry and bemused about the situation last week. They want Brian Barwick to resign and an independent panel appointed to review the decisions made about the distribution of this money. Have they got any chance of that happening, do you think?
I don't think so. Whilst there are 9 clubs that have written sort of demanding Brian Barwick's dismissal, and I've looked on the Dulwich Hamlet website, and it's a very impassioned letter. We've now had a response from the National League, and that response is pretty fierce as well. They feel that they've been unduly criticised. They put up a very staunch defence. That they claim that there was a Zoom meeting arranged for those clubs that were unhappy with the distribution model, but nobody attended it. So we'd be more than happy to have somebody from the National League to put across the opposite point of view. We do believe in full and fair communication. In terms of what is the problem, what we have is a cake, and what we're fighting over is how the cake is being cut. Yeah. And what the National League have said is that the distribution model did take into consideration attendance and gate receipts in terms of how money was being distributed to individual clubs, but it wasn't the only consideration, and the clubs that are dissenting are thinking that should have been the only consideration. Yeah. Whereas the National League say, well, hold on, the division in which you're in and other elements come into consideration as well. So it's now turned into quite an unpleasant arrangement between those pro and against. You could say if there are 9 clubs against the leadership of the National League, does that mean that there's 50 odd clubs who are in favour? So this thing's going to sadly run a little bit longer. The National League paper, which is actually a really good publication, they've been very much, I think, on the side of the dissenters, and they've had, again, a fairly strong sort of response from the board of the National League itself.
Yeah, I suspect that some of the clubs who didn't sign, Kieran, were maybe put off a little bit by the strength of the letter, because they really haven't held back. I mean, this is just one quote, and it's all the same quote as well. Serious errors of judgment in making unilateral subjective decisions regarding distribution, which ignore government guidelines and ignore the board's conflicts of interest. I mean, this is not just a lashing out. I mean, this is a specific, detailed lashing out, isn't it?
Yes, I think the clubs, sort of the 9 clubs who have grouped together, and I think that includes the like of Dulwich and Hereford and Chester and so on. Yeah. They have said that the board, or they have implied that the board of the National League, which consists of a chairman and also elected members from individual clubs, those clubs have acted in self-interest. And in respect of the distribution model, my understanding is that it probably would have had to have been approved by the National Lottery Fund itself. and therefore the money couldn't have been given out unless that approval was forthcoming. So therefore, the National League are arguing that it has received effective indirect government approval.
Yeah, there's an issue with the National Lottery as well in the theatre world, which I think I've mentioned before, in that they are some pantos will be happening after Christmas now in London and Nottingham and various other big cities, and the National Lottery are funding the seats that can't be sold because of social distancing, but only in theatres that are putting on pantos produced by one producer, which is causing issues. I've got one problem, Kieran. If I was a National League club worried about the distribution of this National Lottery money, I've met Brian Barwick a few times. He's a nice chap. He's very popular and respected. He used to be very high up in BBC and ITV Sport. But he's a career administrator. He's also chair of the Rugby Football League and Super League Europe and the Rugby League World Cup. He's somebody who spends his time spread quite thinly. That would worry me a little bit, because I'm not suggesting for a moment that this is the case. But it's not his only full-time job, is it, really? And if you're spending 24 hours a day trying to save your club financially, you'd like to think that the person in charge of that was also fully focused on the National League. And it's not the case, is it? He's a career administrator who will get a job, even if he is forced to resign, he will turn up as chief executive or chair of another sports commission very soon, won't he?
Yes, I mean, I guess you could say that there is a difference in many respects between a chair and a chief executive. The purpose of a chairman is effectively to run the board. Now, the board therefore he doesn't have to be involved on a 24/7 basis. There are presumably full-time executives whose job is to liaise with the clubs. Somebody somewhere came up with the formula for distribution, which does give more money to clubs in the National League than in National League North and South, and he's giving an extra 15% to certain clubs within those individual divisions. If we take a look at any other distribution models, if we take the EFL, now we've got some clubs such as Sunderland in League One, Ipswich, Portsmouth, who get far bigger crowds than clubs in the Championship, the likes of Rotherham and Barnsley and Luton. Yeah. But the way that the EFL distributes money, 80% Championship, 12% League One, 8% League Two. And so it's not necessarily attendance which forms the drivers for distribution in any form of football. And again, if you think about Bournemouth being in the Premier League for the last 5 seasons on a ground which had a maximum attendance of 11,000, they were still getting far more TV money than Leeds United and Villa when they were in the Championship. Although it could be argued that Leeds and Villa were bigger draws, they were certainly generating far bigger attendances. So attendance isn't the only reason why money is distributed historically. I think there could have been faults in terms of communication. Perhaps the National League created an expectation amongst executives of clubs such as Dulwich and Chester, and that wasn't brought communicated well. And therefore we've ended up with this situation where there are clubs feeling very aggrieved and dissatisfied, as is the National League itself, because they're feeling that they've been unfairly picked on.
It's all getting a bit Lord of the Rings now, Kieran, because our next story is about another 9 Serie A clubs, including the big boys, Milan, Inter and Juventus, have been found guilty of breaching the rules around ticket sales.
Yes, this is a case brought by Italy's antitrust authority, which I presume was originally created for other businesses in Italy, which had certain activities taking place. And as I like both horses and heads, I'm not going to say anything more than that. And this was a case that was brought on behalf of fans by a consumer group. Because what appeared to happen, that the likes of Juventus, Inter and Milan were finding reasons to avoid giving refunds for season tickets. And according to the antitrust authority, this ignored consumer rights, and the small print of the season tickets contained, and I quote, vexatious clauses, nice. which does sound very intriguing. The consumer group is pleased that the ruling has been made in favour of fans, and now in theory, anybody that wants a refund can apply for one. How long that's going to take place, we're not certain. As somebody that had tickets to go and see Euro 2020 matches in Dublin last summer and booked flights with Ryanair, I'm still waiting. So, it could be a long time in football as well. And again, the consumer group, which is sort of a combination of which and the CAB, Consumers Advisory Board here in the UK, it had hoped that the clubs would have been subject to significant fines to send out a signal that trying to do the dirty on fans wasn't acceptable. So no fines were given. But for those fans who are here in the UK and are looking for refunds in terms of season tickets, consumer law is very, very clear. The club has failed to deliver their side of the contract. You are entitled to a refund.
I believe vexatious clauses was one of John Peel's favourite bands at one stage, wasn't it? It's an interesting story. One of the things I love about Italian football is that you have to go to betting shops to buy tickets for games, but it's a strange one, as I'm sure Milan, Inter and Juventus are slightly shamefaced about being found guilty of breaching these rules, but without any financial punishment, it's almost a pointless decision, isn't it, in a way?
Yes, because the worst that happens is that the money that they should have given back is now they're now going to give back, albeit a good few months later than they originally should have done so. So there's no real downside from their perspective.
Okay, just a couple more stories before we get to that interview with Liam Scully of Lincoln City, which is very, very good. And still on the continent, FC St. Pauli in Germany, in Hamburg to be exact, they're ditching the big kit manufacturer and are going to produce all of its kits in-house. And for a bit of context, Kieran, you probably need to explain they're quite a different club, aren't they? They call themselves Freibeuter der Liga for a start, the Pirates of the League.
Yes, FC St. Pauli are the hipsters' heaven when it comes to football in Germany. They set themselves up as very much an anti-establishment club. They are very green. They are very a politicised club, and they've managed to leverage on that by building up a fan base of everybody that reads The Guardian on a Saturday morning in Starbucks. So on the back of that, they do get decent crowds. And they want their kit manufacturing to be sustainable and as green as possible. So they presently have a deal with Under Armour. That's due to expire at the end of this season. They're quite a good club from a manufacturer's point of view to be associated with, because they do probably punch above their weight in terms of the amount of publicity they get, in terms of the number of shirts that they sell, because they get a lot of tourist fans coming across from the rest of continental Europe here in the UK as well. But they actually set out a tender in 2018 for people to take up the new kit contract, and they wanted the materials to be used to be fair trade materials. They wanted it to be recyclable as possible, and so on. And unfortunately, none of the major manufacturers were able to meet the specifications that they've set.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
Therefore they've said, well, we'll sod you all. We'll do it ourselves. If you're not prepared to be a bit more flexible, then we're not prepared to deal with you. And the other strange thing is that their present sponsors, who are a company called Kongstar, they've agreed that if fans aren't happy about being sponsored by Kongstar, you can replace the name on the front of the shirt with the fan's name.
Wow.
Which, if anybody has ever been to Hamburg for a weekend, sometimes sort of by 3:00 in the morning on a Sunday, not knowing your own name is quite a common activity, and therefore it could be of benefit to the local police when they're accompanying you to your hotel or the local station.
Yeah, I was trying to get through that whole story without mentioning that Hamburg, really, but you picked up on the fact that it was in Hamburg, because of course you're an intelligent man, and I probably said Hamburg, but I knew as soon as Hamburg comes up, I knew which direction this conversation was eventually going to be ending in. And it was always going to be.
I've been on cricket tour in Hamburg.
Yes, of course you've been on a cricket tour. The fact that you played a couple of games of cricket while you were there is incidental, Kieran, isn't it? Really?
No, we didn't play any cricket. We just went on cricket tour, and My missus said at the time, why aren't you taking your kit with you? I said, oh, it's team convention. We arrange the kit locally.
Yeah. It's not only that, Kieran. It's why you're not taking your kit with you, but except for the box.
Yeah.
that should have rung a few alarm bells, shouldn't it? Really, that's interesting. He's taking his cap and the box. What's he up to? You would guess that within 10 years, Kieran, all kit manufacturers are going to be offering green and sustainable solutions. And speaking of which, Arsenal have become the first Premier League club to sign up to the UN Sport for Climate Action Framework, which makes you suspect that Hector Bellerin has been in to see the chairman. I mean, obviously this is very laudable. Will it cost Arsenal anything signing up to this?
Not particularly. I mean, the club has committed to use its ability to communicate. Clearly, it's got a huge social media reach. It wants to have a positive impact in terms of being more sustainable club. Presently, Forest Green Rovers, I think that will come as no surprise to anybody, and Hibernian, who are a bit green to begin with, of course. They have been the two clubs that have signed up to date. But for a Premier League club to do this, there will be some cost consequences for Arsenal. They're replacing single-use plastics with water dispensers. They now have the ability. They've got some batteries which are using, I think, recyclable energy to use on the floodlights. They're using water recycling to maintain the pitch and things of this nature. So all of these things are very laudable. And I think if we are moving towards a greener environment, and clearly we've seen the government just say that petrol and diesel cars are effectively going to be outlawed by 2030. Then by Arsenal, by taking this initiative, are perhaps just trying to keep ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and again, these are the sort of things that you would imagine will be second nature within 5-10 years, you would hope. And Arsenal are a club who have had a little bit of criticism on this pod recently, so I think it's only fair that we acknowledge that this is a good thing that they're doing. And our final story, Kieran, is by way of an update to a recent theme. Following criticism for not fully engaging in this particular issue, the PFA has now announced that they are setting up a task force to further examine the issue of brain injury in football, with Sir Geoff Hurst saying this week that the biggest issue is actually in training. It's the constant heading of balls in training rather than in matches. This is something we've discussed before, Kieran. It's not going to cost the PFA very much money, but it's a very important thing. Yes,
the tragic death of Nobby Stiles. Yeah. Last week, I think, sort of brought this into attention. We've had Chris Sutton talking about his father having dementia. And anybody that's had, it's not just the person themselves; it's the people around them. The Baroness's mother had dementia, and I had to watch the person I love the most sort of come away in tears, because when your own parents don't recognise you, when your own parents are scared by anything which is slightly out of the usual, you're not able to give them the protection. There has been research done by Glasgow University, and that has indicated that a professional footballer is around about 3.5 times more likely to get dementia. And we look, everybody that has any affection for football in this country remembers or has seen 1966. Well, five of those players have had dementia or have dementia at present. And that's too many. One is too many. So fair play to Geoff Hurst. He said that there's a good case for saying that children should be discouraged from heading the ball. In fact, there's a case for somebody, either FIFA or the FA saying in youth football, no headings allowed until you reach the age of 13 or 14 because your brain is still developing, your skull is expanding, your neck muscles aren't strong enough. If we look at the neurological report in respect of what happened to Jeff Astle, that report indicated that he had a similar sort of brain scan to what you would expect to see in respect of a boxer, and brain damage in boxing. We've seen similar in the NFL has become very much part of sort of the what's being seen in terms of medical research. So I think this is a step forwards. We need to protect players. Nobby Stiles died, in a care home. His family should have been able to see him as much as they can. Clearly, COVID didn't help as well. So these people are right to try to highlight the issue. And we've given the PFA stick in the past.
Yeah.
We heard from Liam in terms of the positives. This is another positive. I think it should be matched by the Football Association, by the Premier League, by the EFL, because it's your employees. And at some point in time, if these organisations connected to football do nothing, there is going to be a class action against the football authorities for some form of workplace injury. And that could run into huge sums of money.
Well, as you just hinted in a kind of reverse spoiler alert, this is quite a good week for the PFA, because early on in our interview with Liam Scully, who is the CEO of Lincoln, the PFA also get another pat on the back. So I think for the first time in a year, 2 positive mentions of the PFA. Now, when it comes to Lincoln City, Kieran, I have to be a big man here, because recently I had the hump with Lincoln City because you attended by Zoom a fans board meeting. And as you know, Kieran, we didn't talk about it in the pod, but I did sulk off air. I was sulking because I wasn't invited. And it made Ali laugh a lot, because I do. Sulking's my default setting. I love saying things like, well, if you don't know why I'm upset, there's no point continuing the conversation. But it turns out I had been invited to the fan board meeting. I just forgot to put it in my diary. So I'm going to have to be very nice to our guest, who is Liam Scully, the Chief Executive of Lincoln City. And here's what he had to say to us in a very wide-ranging interview. Liam, hello. First of all, I'm so sorry about missing that meeting. I had to take the cat to the all-night vet. I think apparently it was a very good meeting, Liam. I'm sorry about that. How are you?
Yeah, no, very, very well, thank you.
Good.
Myself and the rest of the supporters board, we have forgiven you, so don't worry about it.
Thank you. I'm sure that. Well, I'm holding out for when all this is over, so I can actually go to Lincoln and have a proper pint with you all. Liam, just for a bit of context and for our listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to Lincoln City.
I joined what used to be football in the community as a school leaver, internship in coaching, and that was at Doncaster Rovers. I was very fortunate to be given an opportunity there, and basically over 16, 17 years at Doncaster Rovers, worked my way through the structure, first of all through the community trust, and then into the main club, and then when Lincoln City got promoted into the Football League a number of years ago, just through some mutual contact, I was asked to interview for the chief executive job, and was very proud, very honoured to be selected. So for the last 3.5 years, I've been in charge of Lincoln City on a day-to-day basis, but pretty much having spent my whole working life in football.
Am I right in saying, Liam, that right at the very start of your training, that was paid for by the PFA? Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was one of the first few apprentices in the non-playing side, which was aiming to help those that had kind of dropped out of the game. So my £40 a week for 2 years, and subsidised by the PFA. Very grateful for that, because I was able to continue my education and training, but equally in a sport that I loved. And I've been completely honest with you, Kevin, without getting too personal. Without that opportunity, I could have been doing anything right now.
Yeah.
It's like when you get released from football, you leave school, and as a young man, didn't really know what I was going to do. So yeah, we'll be forever grateful for that opportunity I was given.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear, because the PFA gets some negative feedback, so it's good to hear about some of the good things they do. Liam, I'm going to struggle not to say Sincil Bank in this interview. So it's the LNER Stadium now, isn't it? We have to get that straight. It's the LNER Stadium, is that correct?
It is, but our commercial director, he's got me on a fined pot for every interview I give and say the wrong name, and I think I'm about 50 or 60 quid in debt to him already. Right, so okay. Yeah, you are right, but the LNER Stadium indeed.
And the turnstiles of the LNER Stadium are probably as close to the centre of Lincoln as any club is close to the centre of their city. So before we talk about your club in the city. Tell us about the city itself and the impact of the recent pandemic, because that beautiful cathedral brings hundreds of thousands of visitors a year, and the impact of losing them for the city must have been enormous.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the first and foremost, Lincoln City is around 100,000 people. It's a beautiful city, as you rightly said. You know, the people are really warm and welcoming, but we're also quite a rural county, so the whole county and where our fan base comes from, there's actually over 20% of our season ticket holders that have to travel more than an hour and a half to come to our games. You know, you don't drive through Lincoln to anywhere other than Skegness. So, you know, you've got to be coming to Lincoln for a purpose. And our match days, where we've had attendances that have risen from 3,000 to over 9,000 in the last few years, have obviously had a huge economic impact on the city of Lincoln. And what we've also been working very hard with last few years is understanding the behaviour of our fans and how we can add value to the wider city and the wider economy of Lincoln, the city, as well as Lincoln City Football Club.
Well, that's what I was really impressed to read on your website, because you were able to quantify recently exactly what no football means to the economy, because you reckon the home match, as you say, it brings about 2,000 extra people into the city. And one example you gave is that local chip shops see a 300% rise in match day trade. So it's important that people know the impact of there not being fans at football is having on your community, isn't it?
Yeah, so right on our doorstep, as you said, Kevin, there are a number of local businesses. So there are some of the bigger chains that you'd see, but equally there are small kind of sole traders or smaller businesses. And what our match day does, and being a town centre football club, you know, what we don't have around us is a big retail park or load of space. So, you know, fans literally have to come through the terrace streets and off the high street in order to get to the football club. So, you know, along the way, what we do have is the big chains that are obviously huge employers in Lincoln and that employ a great number of staff. Like I said, the local cafes and our match days, be that Tuesday night or Saturdays, there's a proven spike of between 60 and 300% in terms of turnover and footfall in those areas. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to work with the University of Lincoln, a top 25 university, along with the Coventry University, to kind of quantify understand that, because it's all right as a football club saying, well, we have this impact on Lincoln, the wider economy, but then what we wanted to understand is how we can better that for all our partners. So the study started around 2.5 years ago, concluded around 4 months ago, and what we're ultimately now in the phase of doing, albeit in the middle of a is working with our partners to understand how we can improve match days, ultimately help their businesses.
Kieran, we talk a lot about the impact that clubs have in the community, but actually being able to put a figure on it is really important, isn't it?
Yes, because you know, as Liam said, if you can put a number on things, then you can go into meetings with the local MP, with the local council, and explain to them that it is making a positive contribution, and to try to get them on board or in terms of issues such as a return to football before an audience. It's not just impacting upon the club, club's finances. It does have an impact upon all of the local supply chain, all of the local logistics issues as well. So it's absolutely essential that we can actually put some hard numbers into this, because you know, we know that there has been a conversation between Oliver Dowden and the football authorities recently. But if he is just given anecdotal evidence, that's one thing. Hard numbers, you know, they concentrate the mind.
And Liam, in terms of the £50 million bailout that we've been hearing so much about, and the slow progress of that, how important is that going to be for the financial well-being of the club in future?
Absolutely critical, Kevin, and I think that League One, League Two, predominantly, and some of the clubs in the Championship being them, you know, the Wickhams, the Rotherham. Match day revenue is ultimately the lion's share of the income every year. You know, we get core funding through the Solidarity and core funding. But if you were then to just strip match day revenue out of that, the football clubs are left with very little. You know, ourselves, we have our commercial income, but ultimately that is attached to match days and playing in front of audiences. And outside of that, we've got a small in event. We've got a 3D pitch that we've recently received a grant from the Football Foundation to upgrade it. But outside of that, that is our business. So to take that away from us, it has a massive impact. And we're quite happy to share the numbers on that. So if we look at from when first lockdown happened, and assuming that we would play behind closed doors for the rest of this season, looking at our actuals from last year and our projections this year, quite comfortably, that's 2.75 million that we would have lost in revenue.
Wow.
Fair, we have managed to make savings. We've been forced to make savings. We got our pro budget by 40% this year. We sadly, like many other clubs, had to make a series of redundancies.
Yeah.
There isn't a paperclip wasted in the business right now.
Yeah.
All of that has contributed to around just over £1 million worth of savings, but we're still significantly out of pocket. In business, we have long-term cash flow plans, we have 3-year projections, and we've taken a significant hit, and right now the picture is bleak, and that's why a rescue package in the form of grants, not loans, not further borrowing, is absolutely critical.
We've heard from many chief execs and club owners, Liam, about difficult decisions that have to be made to get a club through this. But you used an expression that I was really impressed with recently. You talked about a hierarchy of importance, that the definition of success has now changed. It's not about winning points or trophies. It's about making sure the club is still here for those fans who consider the club as their social space, their safe space.
Completely. And we talked, and I've heard you guys mention it on the podcast before, around the true owners of a football club and fans, and ultimately, as the chief suit at the club right now, as the directors, we're just the current custodians. Lincoln City Football Club, 120 years. Hopefully, it's here for another 120 years beyond it. So even if we're here running 10, 15 years, it's going to be a small dot on its history, and our job is to leave it in a better place that we can, than we found it. I think the scary thing for us right now is the fact that we don't want to be, so Lincoln City Football Club go out of business. We survived the ITV digital collapse many years ago through the goodwill. We've got over 5,000 fans as shareholders in the club.
Yeah.
A part of that. So, we have an absolute responsibility to them in order to safeguard their football club. And we all want winning football. That's let's be honest. That's why our attendances have gone from 3,000 to 9,000. We've had success on the field for the last few years. If you were to ask me what does success look like this season, then surviving and making sure that the fans have a football club to support in the future, it has to be the top of that list. And hopefully we're doing trying to get to that point. You don't earn the right to win games on the field if you're not there as a football club. So yeah, number one, can we survive it?
You talk as a club a lot about the mental well-being of football fans. So would you say that live streaming of games, for example, is just as important from a fan's well-being perspective as it is from a financial perspective for you? Because at least it keeps them in some sort of contact with the club and with other people watching the game at the same time.
Yeah, completely. So that you're right. It's some form of contact. It's a workaround. It's something that's better than nothing. The holistic experience of a match day is getting up, meeting your mates at the bus stop, having a pint at the local pub, walking up to the ground, the smell of the onions on the burgers and the dodgy bottle time that we get emails about on a Sunday after the game or whatever. But that's what football's about, and that kind of interaction that you have with people. And we know there are extremes where people, it will be their social contact of the week. That's where we've got to be very, very aware. But it's not just the extremes. Some need football as part of their release. We all work busy, hard-working, daily lives, and the fact that we're very fortunate to be so well supported, but choose to part with their money with us as part of their expenditure, their disposable expenditure. I think we've got a responsibility to them, and it's not just for 90 minutes on a Saturday. It's a build-up, pre-game, it's post-game. It's everything that it brings. And for me, having previously worked in the community schemes and knowing the work that goes on, I do have some real concerns around the well-being of fans, that aren't able to attend games. And we know that from Lincoln City, from conversations that we've directly had.
You've generally made me quite emotional, actually, Liam. I just miss the smell of the onions. I mean, it's just that small, intangible thing, just being with your mates and talking nonsense. But talking of fans, Liam, tell us about the impact of the regular fan board meetings that you have.
Yeah, so a number of years ago, obviously, when I came to the football club, and we were making quick progress, and I think one of the things I was very aware of as the new boy coming to the football club is we needed to make some changes. We needed to improve our commerciality as a football club. We needed to change a lot of the old routines and rituals that had been in place. And the new boy in the new suit coming to town, changing things that fans have done for a long time, it's never, it's never a popular decision, or it's never something that should be done without thought. So what we did was we constituted a fan board, a supporters board, and the idea of the supporters board is it doesn't represent anyone. It doesn't aim to speak for somebody, but
Okay.
what it aims to do is have a cross group of people. We speak to them and have two-way dialogue. They can inform us of their thoughts and their opinions. So on there, we've got season ticket holders, non-season ticket holders. We've got families. We've got single people. We've got people 6 pints with their mates on a Saturday, and we've got those that want completely something different. And what we do is it's through structured and formal dialogue. It's we have minutes of meetings. They're published on our website, and ultimately myself and other members of the executive team, our chairman, our vice chairman, we attend meetings, a whole raft of things for discussion and debate. Quite often they educate us and tell us where we're going wrong. But equally, and being quite honest with you, Kevin, a lot of the time it's giving ourselves the opportunity to kind of justify or give reasons for decisions. And what we've actually found is more often than not is whenever we've made potentially contentious decisions. And I'll give you an example of that. We wanted to play Sheffield Wednesday in a pre-season friendly, and we effectively gave half our stadium to the away travelling support. And the reason being is the economic benefit that had to the club was significant. And I gave away season ticket holders' seats to an opposition. And as you can imagine, that probably didn't go down too well. But having the opportunity to discuss that with the supporters board, explain the financial benefits and the reasons, and fundamentally it helped almost fund a player for that season.
Wow.
They were able to understand those decisions, and then obviously work within their peers and their network and kind of share the reasons. So I think what you can often and football fans are very passionate, but they're intelligent people. They know what's right and wrong for the football club. So giving them the opportunity to be involved in that, we've all got responsibilities, and there should be red lines that aren't crossed. I think it just helps better decision making both ways.
And it shows, Kieran, as well, that you don't have to be a fan-owned club to get fans involved in running the club, do you?
Well, certainly not. I mean, I think what Liam and his team are doing is that they're using the fans as sounding boards. And actually, sometimes you can pick up really good ideas from them as well. So, as he says, it's a two-way street. If you make a decision, it's been made with the best intentions of the club. You can get that across very well. The fans will go and then spread the message because as Liam said, we're not as stupid as some people make us out to be.
Yeah.
And if you get enough people listening to the message, they'll pass it on and say, yeah, we understand the reasons why. It's fully justified. And this is the progress that Lincoln City are going to make. And as Liam said, the most important thing is the club's still there in 12 months' time. And the decisions which are being made are clearly based towards trying to ensure that.
And Liam, you want to improve the matchday experience for your fans with a stadium expansion. Are those plans still able to go ahead?
Yeah, so it's a two-phase project. We're really pleased to be able to deliver the first phase, which is a regenerated artificial grass pitch. So, as you rightly mentioned, Town Centre Football Club, but we artificial grass pitch on our footprint, but it's one of the only playing spaces in the Central Bank. The Central Bank community. There isn't any space to play football other than our stadium. So during lockdown, we free use, and the community used it. But we've been able to get a grant by the Football Foundation in order to regenerate that and make it, a vastly improved facility. Originally, we had hoped to be increasing the capacity of the stadium by a further 3,000 in order to kind of cope with this summer, but unfortunately the pandemic probably has beaten us to that. We're still trying, but I think if we're being honest, it's probably going to have to be the summer and on. But again, that's part of fundraising challenges that we have at the moment. It's going to be a community facility. We're not there to commercialise it. We do want to have kind of community centres in the stand, places for kind of the scouts and the beavers and the community to use. That's the intention of it. Obviously, the secondary benefit is that Lincoln City would have an increased capacity at the stadium, and we can improve fan services. But I think that's hopefully where, what you can see now is the direction that we're trying to take the club is, that there are genuine, and I'm sorry it's cliche, but there are win-wins when the community, authority, and the football club work closely together. You can have that significant benefit, and everybody wins.
Absolutely. Liam, you've gone from the National League to 5th in League One in a short space of time. Has that brought only good challenges, or have there been unexpected difficulties in that rapid rise?
Yeah, no. First and foremost, we never take for granted the on-field success that we've had. It's been catching up to do. Success in the National League days is paying your gas bill at the end of the month.
Right.
It's kind of hand to mouth, and people, in the National League got a huge amount of respect for the clubs. And going from the National League, our first season in the FL, we took 27,000 fans to Wembley. We had a real positive kind of experience. It's just been, been pedaling beneath the water. Our feet have been as we try and catch the club up and keep making sure that I'm not the reason why we're holding the club from going back forward on the field. Michael Appleton came in over a year ago now and has just done such a superb job working with our director, George. We've tried to, our average age of our squad is 23. The reason being is player trading has to be part of our model. You have to sell players. The other thing that is really positive with our football club is that the owners put the money in by way of equity, so it's not loans. It is philanthropic. So what we're able to do is just continually reinvest any profit, be that from cup runs, sales, into just taking the next step forward as a football club. And ultimately, where we want to get to is self-sustainability and salary. This whole reform at this moment in time, that would be an ideal position to be in, because at that point, when you do have philanthropic owners like we have at the football club, to them and asking them to dip their hand in the pocket, it's for special projects, improving fan facilities, or maybe even funding that player. It's not a must-have in order to keep the club running. So that's our whole ambition at this moment.
Liam, it's been brilliant to speak to you. It's yet again, it's great for Lincoln City fans and all genuine football fans to hear another CEO who's not just a faceless suit who's running a business, but somebody who shares the passion and enthusiasm and the energy and the commitment of the people who support the club. I want to end on a positive note, Liam, because there's news of the vaccine trickling through. There's indications that things are starting to look a bit more optimistic. As we talked about earlier in the pod, Kieran has Lincoln City down as one of the good guys in the world of football. Why do you think that is, Liam?
Well, I think we're truly humbled to be given that name, Tiger. If I'm honest, Kevin, I think there's plenty of really clubs. I'm sure you guys have got a list of wrong-uns and whatever else. I think sometimes, if you can allow me to speak as a football fan here, there's a lot of people with good intentions and good endeavour, and you see a lot of businessmen and women very successful in their own right. Industries, and they come to football and think they can crack it, and often throw good money after bad at maybe trying to get promotions and whatever, and the dream turns sour. So, I'm a huge fan of community football clubs. There are so many well run. I know you've spoken with Brian at Shrewsbury and Rochdale, Doncaster, and there are some really Exeter, really well run community clubs. So I suppose I'm proud to be here, speaking not just on behalf of Lincoln City, but a lot of other League One and League Two clubs that do some phenomenal work in the community. Really do care about the fans. Hopefully, we can champion and shout loud enough about those guys and the good work that goes on. While you guys can force change in the wrong ends, but we can continue kind of doing the best we can for our communities.
Liam, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for taking time out to do so. I really can't wait to go up and join that board meeting and have a proper pint when all this is over. And if there's anything we can do to help publicise any of your ventures, let us know, Liam. And in the meantime, thank you very much and good luck with the rest of this terrible pandemic.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
Kieran, again, I said at the end, I think it's really important for fans to hear that CEOs are very far from the sort of sitcom cliche that you'd get of a CEO, somebody at the top of an organisation who has no interest really in how the organisation's run. But I thought what was interesting from a financial point of view, we talked very specifically about the fact that the money that's going into the club is in the form of equity and not in loans, and that clearly makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yes, because it gives the club a degree of security that should there be any change in ownership or should there be any change in philosophy, a football club does not have to give shares back to the owners. It does not have to pay dividends, whereas with loans, a loan by definition has a repayment date, and loans... Even if they're initially at 0% interest, there's normally clauses in them that interest can be applied at a later date. So that was a real positive, and I was so impressed by Liam. Historically, I've always had an issue with clubs that play in red and white stripes because I'm colourblind. My university debut at football, we were in green and white stripes. The opposition were in red and white stripes. It's fair to say that my performance was utterly shite because I didn't know who to pass to, and I was never picked again.
I can't keep up with who you've got an issue with in football anymore, Kieran, to be honest, and that's ironic considering I've just written a book about having issues in football. I was also, what impressed me very much with Liam is that his understanding of the fact that football fans are missing football and it's affecting their mental well-being, because there are a lot of people outside football who won't understand that not actually being able to go and see your football team every second week, not having that focus, not having that thing in your life leads a massive hole. And it's not just affecting the community economically, which it is doing very badly, but it is affecting the mental well-being of a lot of people, young and old, whose life, for better or worse, revolves around Lincoln City. There are people listening to this who say, well, your life shouldn't revolve around a football club, but in a way it does for us. It does for all sorts of people. Your sort of internal body clock outside the summer instinctively knows where you should be in any sort of cycle. You know when to start getting nervous. You know when to start talking to your mates about what time you're going to be in the pub. 11:30. It's always the same time. Why we talk about it, I don't know. But it's always there as part of your life, and it's good to hear a CEO acknowledge and understand that importance.
Yes, and he certainly, Liam clearly understands what it is to be a football fan, and I do think that some owners don't get it. They know that the fans are loyal and passionate and so on, and from those owners' perspectives, it's just a means of, well, these people are to be monetized. They just see them as walking pots of money on the hoof, to be milked as much as possible. But Liam and the rest of the Lincoln City board, I think they deserve full credit for the way that they engage with fans. By taking that approach, that's the reason why attendances at the club have rapidly increased, because there is a sense of inclusiveness, there's a sense of belonging at the club, and that will pay dividends in future years, because they've had a fantastic season. They're in the second round of the FA Cup. They're fifth presently in League One. They've made all of that progress from the National League. You do reach a point where things start to plateau, but the fans will have had the goodwill from the way that they've been treated, with honesty, with respect, with a sense of their feeling. And yeah, I understand people that don't get football. They won't understand. We've had this discussion in the past. When I think of the 10 best moments of my life, 6 of them probably involved football. 2 of them involved the birth of my kids, getting married, and then the night the Russian girlfriend brought her sister around. And that was my 10. And football does take that senior position because it gives you that sense of purpose, and also it sets your body clock. When the fixtures come out in June, you then set the rest of your year ahead of you. You know where you're going to be. What we've got at present, I don't know who we're playing this weekend. That's how distorted my life has become, and there is a sense of genuine loss. I think experienced by all fans at present.
This is going to be a terrible indictment of the way males fail to communicate properly. But you've got kids. Well, we've been doing this for more than a year, and it's just I never knew. I've got one as well. Have I ever told you that? I didn't. Rather childishly, I'm just trying to keep Kieran talking now because he foolishly told me that Turkish TV were hanging on for him to finish. So anyway, I'm trying to find some more questions to talk about. But no, go on, you go and talk to your friends at Turkish TV. I don't know why you don't just marry them. I'm gonna sulk about it. I'm gonna go in and say to her, Ali will say, "Is it all right?" I say, "No." He preferred Turkish TV to talking to me. We'll be back on my 2 grown-up men. We'll be back on Monday to talk about important issues in football. It's our questions issue on Monday. And if you have any questions on anything we've spoken about today or any aspect of football and finance in any part of the world at any level, it's questions@priceoffootball.com. And as Kieran needs to go and talk to his new best friends, I will say stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
The price of football. The price of football.